Kevin Holland versus Kyle Daukaus takes place this weekend in the co-main event of UFC Fight Night Vegas 38, Santos versus Walker, and the return of Trailblazer is here. We finally see Kevin Holland back in the octagon after his hiatus, and I call it a hiatus. It's actually a reasonably normal layoff for any other fighter on the roster, but because of how active Kevin Holland was throughout the last few years, it seems like a very long layoff for him, but he's back against Kyle Daukaus, an unranked contender, but still very, very dangerous and can pose a bit of a threat style-wise to Kevin Holland because Kyle Daukaus can grapple. He goes for grappling in his bouts. All of his early fights in his career are by submission. He likes that way of fighting, and Kevin Holland has been kind of exposed in his last few outings that he doesn't really like to deal with that style of fighting. We saw it against Derek Brunson. We saw it against Marvin Vettori. However, let's not forget that these two people are Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori. Derek Brunson is now about to earn a title shot, maybe, if he can beat Jared Cannonier. He's in a title elimination bout right now. Marvin Vettori fought Israel Adesanya for 5 rounds. These aren't bums that Kevin Holland is losing to. Let's not forget he finished Jacare Souza from off of his back. However, it's still a very dangerous matchup here because not many people know who Kyle Daukaus is. People now know who his brother is, Chris Daukaus, after he KO'd Shamil Abdurakhimov in the prelims of UFC 266 not too long ago. But they don't know Kyle Daukaus, and he's very good, and he can grapple, but I do believe that Kevin Holland's going to get this one done. He's been working with Johnny Hendricks on his grappling. Before that as well, he was over at AKA with Daniel Cormier and all of the Dagestanis, training his grappling there as well. I know some people told him to fly out to Dagestan. Flying out to AKA is basically flying out to Dagestan, except they're meeting you halfway, essentially. So, I like that Kevin Holland's been working on his grappling, but is it going to be enough to beat Kyle Daukaus? Because Daukaus showed great grappling against Brendan Allen, and that's a common opponent that both of them have, and Brendan Allen choked out Kevin Holland in the second round. Now, very different situations in those fights. Daukaus came in against Brendan Allen, gave him a couple of decent scrambles, but Brendan Allen eventually got the job done by decision, out-scrambled him, outworked him, out-hustled him, but that was on short notice for Kyle Daukaus, I do want to mention. But Kevin Holland was doing very good against Brendan Allen in the first round of their fight, beating him on the feet. Then it went to the ground. Allen tried a couple of submission attempts. Holland defended him very well, got out of those positions, ended up on top, landed big shots of ground and pound at the end of the first round. Then the second round comes around, and he gives up a bad position. Allen pounces on his neck, takes the back, rear naked chokes him in the second round. It might be a tough matchup here for Kevin Holland, but I do believe he's going to go out there and get it done. He's got crazy power. He's got such a long reach for the division on the feet as well, and he's very, very dangerous on the feet. And I think with those wrestling adjustments that he's made recently, I do see him going out there and beating a guy like Kyle Daukaus, because on the feet, Daukaus just seems a little bit gun-shy at times and a little bit not too fundamentally sound. He goes out there, he looks okay, but he doesn't seem to let the trigger go too much. Likes to push opponents up against the cage. Did that to Phil Hawes in their fight that they had in the first round of their fight, but Phil Hawes was outlanding him in the first round. The second round was a bit closer. Then Phil Hawes won the third round. I like Kyle Daukaus here. I don't even mind him as an underdog here, but I do trust Kevin Holland to get a nice rebound win here against an unranked contender. The odds just aren't quite juicy enough for me to be swayed and persuaded and tempted by the odds enough to pick Kyle Daukaus here. If he was like a plus 300 or like over 2-1 underdog or something like that, then maybe I would consider it. It's actually a close fight, but I'm leaning the way of Kevin Holland. He's got more experience. And let's not forget, he was whooping ass in the UFC long before these last 2 losses. It's not like he's just that guy that's on that 2-fight losing streak. He beat Charlie Ontiveros. I know it was a bit of a weird situation, but he took him down twice in that fight, in the Charlie Ontiveros fight. He went against Jacare Souza, finished him off of his back. That's normal for Kevin Holland, I guess, just beating Jacare Souza whilst on your back, no problems there. He went against Darren Stewart, had a close fight, a split decision. I thought it was a unanimous decision-worthy performance by Kevin Holland, winning those first 2 rounds. Turns out otherwise. One judge thought Darren Stewart won the second round, but I believe that was a win for Kevin Holland. But there, Darren Stewart did get a couple of takedowns and do quite well on the ground against Kevin Holland. And Joaquin Buckley, of course, we know Joaquin Buckley. Kevin Holland destroyed him basically twice in one night with KOs. Anthony Hernandez got destroyed in the first round against Kevin Holland. He still has that ability to go out there and annihilate competition with his power, with his range, with his awkwardness, with his unorthodoxy, and we saw that against Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori did not have an easy time against Kevin Holland in their bout. He got a lot of takedowns in that fight, and he had a lot of control time as well, but when it was on the feet, in the few short moments they were on the feet, Kevin Holland showed how dangerous he is in those moments. I don't think Daukaus is strong enough to get Holland to the ground and keep him there the same way a Derek Brunson or a Marvin Vettori is. I didn't see him be able to do that against Phil Hawes. I don't like that whatsoever. I like Daukaus, but he just doesn't seem to be able to implement his game plan against levels of opponents like Brendan Allen, like Phil Hawes, and I think that Kevin Holland is around that level of opponent. So, Daukaus could have improved, but I'm going to bet on the fact that he hasn't made rapid changes and all of a sudden become an absolute god overnight. So, I'm definitely going to be going with Kevin Holland here. But it's risky. It is a risky bout. Both these guys 28 years of age. I know exactly why they made this matchup. It's not just for a rebound for Kevin Holland against a winnable opponent. It's like they want to move Phil Hawes up the rankings as well. So if in the case that Kevin Holland loses and they lose a prospect, they have Kyle Daukaus. And Kyle Daukaus, of course, lost to Phil Hawes, who's also unranked. So if Daukaus beats Holland and moves into the rankings, that means Phil Hawes is going to naturally move into the rankings, and they can shimmy out some of the older guys and bring up some of the newer guys that they're paying less for being in the same ranking position. I understand how they're doing this matchup, but I'm definitely going to be going with Kevin Holland here. The reach on the feet is too much, and I just watched Daukaus in his last fight against Hawes get rocked in certain moments, not pull the trigger when he looked like he maybe had Phil Hawes hurt a little bit, and Phil Hawes is just a strong man. Okay, he's not really a phenomenal grappler in many of his bouts, but even he was able to stuff all of Daukaus' takedowns and get two of his own in the third round of their fight and win the third round very dominantly. So, when you watch a guy like Kevin Holland, who sometimes does slow down as the rounds go on and slow down in the third round, but now he's had 2 5-rounders, I'm not really too worried about him slowing down in this 3-round fight. But one thing that we have seen in 3-round bouts is Kevin Holland typically does slow down as the rounds go on. Now, Daukaus really slowed down in the third round against Phil Hawes and got dominated on the ground in the third round against Phil Hawes as well. So I'm not going to bet on the chances that Daukaus is going to wait it out or stall it out the fight and then come back in the later rounds when Kevin Holland starts to fade. I think Daukaus is going to get clipped on the chin early, maybe in the second round, get put down, get put out cold, and Kevin Holland moves on up the rankings in the middleweight division and moves on to another opponent, maybe a Darren Till. I don't know if they would do that matchup because they don't want to lose both of them, or they don't want to lose either of them, but they maybe would do that matchup though. I could see a Uriah Hall matchup for Kevin Holland as well, and if Daukaus wins this one, I could definitely see some lower down guys in the rankings maybe. I don't know, maybe welcomes back Chris Weidman. Maybe that would be a good test for Kevin Holland if he wins this one, and actually a good matchup for him, seeing as Weidman's been out for so long. Maybe he could recommend, hey, I'll take on Weidman, a wrestler, and I'll prove that I've improved my wrestling against a guy who can grapple in Chris Weidman. Maybe that would be a potential matchup that could be made. I'd prefer it to take on strikers like Uriah Hall, like Darren Till, like these other guys in the middleweight division. Of course, you've now got Kelvin Gastelum moving and leaving the middleweight division, so everyone's going to get jumped up the rankings a little bit here. So there's a lot on the line. And I don't mind the underdog of Daukaus. I'm telling you this while I'm telling you to maybe pick Kevin Holland. I'm picking Kevin Holland. And I do trust Kevin Holland to win, but in no way is he a lock of the card here. The odds are close for a reason. I mean, Daukaus is a near-even underdog here. It's risky. He's very good, but I just don't think he's good enough to beat the level of opponent of Kevin Holland, who's got good scrambles, who even on bottom is very active, and that's something that Daukaus isn't really whenever he gets people up against the cage, or in the clinch, or even on the ground at times as well. He looks for position, he looks for submission. If he doesn't get the submission on the ground, he doesn't do a lot of damage, and one thing that Kevin Holland always does quite well if he is on the ground in a bout is strike off of his back. He always is hitting his opponent, and we saw against Carlos Condit and Matt Brown that Carlos Condit basically won that fight from being busier on bottom because Matt Brown was winning the positional control, but Carlos Condit was just staying active, staying busy, landing elbows from on bottom, landing punches from on bottom, and when you're in that position and you've got the reach of Kevin Holland, you can do some damage from those positions as well because you have so much leverage in your arms and so much room and distance to create space and elbows that can come a lot stronger from those positions when you've got long limbs. I feel as though Kevin Holland gets this one done. It's hard to really break this down too much because we haven't seen too much of Daukaus, but one thing we do know about Daukaus, he does like to grapple with his opponents. He typically always goes for grappling against his opponents. He was able to out-grapple Dustin Stoltzfus, but then again, Dustin Stoltzfus is a bit of a shit opponent, in all honesty. We found that out against Rodolfo Vieira. Not saying that losing to Rodolfo Vieira is bad, but he just had nothing in terms of any skill whatsoever in that Rodolfo Vieira fight. It was quite embarrassing of a performance. But when you look at the stats of Daukaus in his bouts, I believe he has something like a 30% takedown rate, which is not a good percentage to have. Takedown accuracy, 29%. You know? Not the best. It's not something I'm looking at as a stat to tell me that he's going to go out there and ragdoll Kevin Holland like a Marvin Vettori, like a fucking Derek Brunson can, because look what Brunson just did to Darren Till. I think it's time to stop looking at that as like a bum loss for Kevin Holland here, even though Derek Brunson is a shambles and an absolute disgrace to mixed martial arts. It's the middleweight division, so these things can happen. I just think Holland's going to be too awkward, too rangy on the feet, and I think he's going to do well in the scrambles, and I think Daukaus just won't be able to really get a hold of him because Holland's so spindly, so weird, so athletic in certain positions. I don't think Daukaus is going to be able to hold him down unless Kevin Holland goes out there and fucking body triangles himself on bottom like he did against Derek Brunson. I don't see him losing this bout. But even against Derek Brunson, he took down Brunson in the 5th round. He rocked Brunson at one moment in that fight as well, and Brunson ended up going for a takedown, getting it. I can see Holland winning this one. I see him getting this one done. He's got higher striking accuracy. He's got much better striking defense, and that's what I'm talking about in the Daukaus versus Hawes fight. He got clipped with a lot of shots that he shouldn't have been getting hit by Phil Hawes, because he has a very low striking defense. He leaves himself open in certain moments. When you put heat on him, he opens up his guard a little bit, and I don't think you can do that against Kevin Holland. Plus, he doesn't really go for too many takedowns. He'll push you against the cage, knee at your thigh for a little bit, and I just don't see him being able to do that for 3 rounds against Kevin Holland. I don't see him being able to close that distance effectively. Even Vettori, when he tried to close the distance on Kevin Holland against the cage, was getting clipped with big shots and kind of falling into the clinch with Kevin Holland and using that to take him down. I don't see Daukaus doing that. I believe in the improvements of Kevin Holland, and with Holland's improvements, he was so fundamentally not so good at it the first time that he can actually make rapid improvements, and it's actually weird how good he is considering how bad fundamentally he looked against Brunson and Marvin Vettori, because he's managed to defend takedowns against various other opponents in his career. And maybe Vettori and Brunson are just that much better of a grappler than anyone else in the middleweight division. But other people didn't seem to be able to dominate him on the ground. Even against Darren Stewart, he was rolling over. At one moment, Darren Stewart had to put his toes in the cage and cling onto the cage to try and keep a hold of him because Holland was scrambling and ending up on top and ending up back on his feet. I feel like Holland's got this one, but I'm worried because we could lose a star here, and Daukaus could get this one done, but he's at such a reach disadvantage, such a striking defense disadvantage, such a striking accuracy disadvantage against lesser opponents as well. I just think he's going to be clipped too many times, and if he does get clipped early, which I do believe is going to happen immediately in this fight, I don't think he's going to even have the wherewithal and the capabilities in his brain after being tagged a couple of times and stung up a couple of times on the feet by Holland to effectively grapple at his full potential anyway. So I'm going to go with Holland. We'll see how it goes. Risky matchup though, I tell you. I don't mind the underdog of Daukaus here. So just putting it out there, Holland could not have He might just not have the takedown defense to deal with Daukaus. I believe he does, and I think the improvements that he's making recently, I trust him to have those improvements. He's been at AKA for a couple of months, I believe it was. He's also been at Johnny Hendricks' gym, training with Johnny Hendricks, and Johnny Hendricks is an amazing grappler, out-grappled Woodley in the NCAAs, I believe, if I remember correctly. Very good team around him now, working on his weaknesses. I think Holland's going to bounce back with vengeance and get the job done. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'm going Kevin Holland, round 2 TKO. I think he tags Daukaus on the feet. Daukaus has a poker face, but then starts backing up a little bit because he's been rocked. And then Holland just starts wailing on him against the cage, much like the Jeff Neal finish that he has, which is a very good finish to look back on in his career. And I think he's going to finish Daukaus off against the cage, finish with some ground and pound shots, and get the job done in the second round. Toodle pip, I'll see you later. Goodbye.